The quantum fluctuations trembled across the surface of the tempera mirror, casting prismatic reflections against the laboratory's titanium walls. Xiao stood motionless before it, her breath caught in her throat. The mirror showed her face, but not as it should be. Lines deepened around her eyes, her skin loosened, hair silvered at the temples, and then, impossibly, the process reversed. Wrinkles smoothed, gray strands darkened, the youthful elasticity of her skin returned. "Anomaly detected," chimed the system in its artificial cadence. "Subject experiencing temporal inversion, aging backwards." Xiao's fingers trembled as she reached toward the mirror's surface, stopping just short of touching it. In all her years researching temporal physics, she had never witnessed such a phenomenon. The temporum mirror was supposed to measure chronological stability, not this. Outside the laboratory windows, Neo-Aurora's skyline pierced the perpetual twilight, a forest of metal and light, where humans had conquered nearly every limitation except time itself. The year 2157 marked humanity's pinnacle of technological achievement, and the tempera mirror stood as its crowning glory, the tool that allowed people to regulate their aging process, to maintain the perfect balance between youth and wisdom. But something was wrong with her reflection. Terribly wrong. "Computer, end sequence," Xiao commanded, her voice steady despite the cold fear crawling up her spine. The mirror's surface dimmed, but did not completely power down. Instead, a single line of text appeared. "Phase displacement detected. Subject Xiao He. Temporal regression anomaly." Xiao stepped back, her mind racing. As the leading temporal physicist at Neo-Aurora's Chronological Institute, she had dedicated her life to understanding the mirror's mechanisms. Yet in this moment, she felt like a novice. Temporal regression wasn't merely impossible, it contradicted the fundamental laws of entropy. "Log results and secure the lab," she ordered. Gathering her notes, nobody could know about this yet, not until she understood what was happening. As the laboratory sealed behind her, Xiao cast one last glance at the mirror. For a fleeting second, she thought she saw something move behind her reflection, a shadow that didn't belong to her. But when she turned, she was alone. The solitude felt familiar. At 43, Xiao had sacrificed personal connections for her research. Her apartment in the upper levels of Neo-Aurora's scientific quarter reflected this isolation, minimalist, functional, with only the faintest touches of personality, a small jade plant inherited from her grandmother, and a collection of pre-war physics texts. The rarity of physical books made them valuable. But to Xiao, their worth lay in their tangibility, a connection to scientists who had wondered about time long before humanity learned to manipulate it. That night, sleep eluded her. The image of her aging and then youthening face haunted her thoughts. More disturbing was what the mirror had labeled temporal regression. It was a phenomenon theorized but never observed, the reversal of an individual's timeline while the world continued forward. Dawn found her at her private terminal, searching through restricted archives. If the mirror had detected temporal regression, there had to be precedent, some record of similar anomalies. But the more Xiao searched, the more unsettled she became. Every research path hit the same obstacle. All data regarding experimental temporal anomalies terminated abruptly at a specific date, nearly 200 years ago. The date had a designation, the stopping. Historical records were vague about this period. A brief global disruption in technological systems, described in official texts as a chronological recalibration. But the coincidence was too precise to ignore. Whatever had happened during the stopping had been significant enough to halt all mirror-related experiments, yet insignificant enough to be nearly erased from history. The following morning, Xiao arrived at the institute earlier than usual. The massive underground complex hummed with the steady pulse of quantum processes. She nodded curtly to the few colleagues she passed. Her reputation for brilliance was matched only by her notorious reclusiveness, which suited her fine. Fewer relationships meant fewer complications. She had almost reached her laboratory when a familiar voice called her name. Xiaohe, a moment. Dan Ting approached with measured steps, once her closest colleague and friend, now the Institute's security director and her most vigilant observer. His tall frame and perpetually serious expression had once been comforting. Now, they represented the growing distance between them. "You accessed restricted archives last night," he said without preamble. Not a question, but an accusation. "I was following a research thread," she replied, careful to keep her voice neutral. "At 3 a.m, accessing files about the stopping?" His dark eyes studied her face. "You know those records are classified by the Kronos Council." The Kronos Council, the secretive organization that controlled all mirror technology and temporal research. Even mentioning them lowered Dan's voice to a whisper. "I have Level 7 clearance," Xiao reminded him. "Even Level 7 doesn't grant access to stopping records." He leaned closer. "What are you working on?" "Xiao, you've been different lately." The concern in his voice seemed genuine, but Xiao had learned caution. The council had eyes everywhere, and Dan's loyalty to the institution had superseded their friendship years ago. "Standard research," she lied. "I was cross-referencing historical anomalies for my entropy stabilization project." Dan's expression remained skeptical, but he nodded. "The council has been monitoring your progress closely. They expect results from your stabilization work." Of course they did. The council always wanted results, but only certain kinds. Discoveries that reinforced their control of the mirror technology. Never anything that might disrupt the carefully maintained social order. "They'll have them," Xiao assured him, then gestured toward her laboratory. "If that's all?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Be careful. Xiao, some questions are not meant to be answered." The warning lingered in the air as she entered her lab. The temporum mirror awaited, its dormant surface reflecting the room in perfect detail. Except, Xiao froze. There was a smudge on the mirror, a faint handprint that hadn't been there yesterday. She approached cautiously, scanning the room's security logs. No unauthorized entry was recorded. The mirror's surface, constructed of quantum-aligned particles, couldn't hold ordinary fingerprints. Whatever had left this mark wasn't physical, at least not in the conventional sense. As she reached out to examine it, the mirror suddenly activated. Its surface rippled like mercury, and Xiao's reflection appeared, but wrong again. This time, her image flickered between youth and age rapidly, as if someone was scrolling through her timeline at impossible speed. Then, for just an instant, a second figure appeared behind her reflection, blurred and indistinct, like a photograph taken in motion. Before Xiao could react, it vanished, and the mirror went dark. Her heart pounding, Xiao backed away. This wasn't merely a malfunction. The mirror was responding to something or someone. Her scientific mind rebelled against the implications, but she couldn't deny the evidence before her. She spent the day running diagnostics, analyzing every component of the mirror's quantum architecture. By evening, her eyes burned from staring at screens, but she had discovered something significant. Deep in the mirror's programming was a subroutine she had never seen before, an ancient piece of code that predated the Institute itself. Its purpose appeared to be monitoring for specific temporal signatures. One signature was labeled Regression Prime, and beside it, a counter that read, 2 days to stopping event. Xiao's blood went cold. Whatever the stopping had been, according to this countdown, it was about to happen again. She needed more information, and there was only one place she might find it: the Institute's central archives, where physical records from pre-mirror civilizations were stored, records that couldn't be altered with a keystroke. The archives occupied the lowest level of the Institute, a vast chamber rarely visited in an age of digital information. Xiao used her security clearance to enter, finding herself surrounded by towering shelves of actual paper documents and preservation tubes containing scrolls and films. For hours, she searched through scientific journals and historical accounts, looking for any mention of the stopping or temporal regression. Most materials offered nothing beyond what she already knew, sanitized versions of history that portrayed the development of the mirror as an uninterrupted march of progress. She was about to give up when she found it. A journal belonging to Dr. Miranda Chen, one of the mirror's original creators. The entry stopped abruptly 200 years ago, but the final pages contained frantic notes about temporal echoes and regression anomalies. One passage stood out. "The mirror is not what we thought. It doesn't merely reflect time, it contains it, and something is looking back at us through it. I've seen my reflection age backwards. The others think I'm losing my mind, but I know what I saw. Tomorrow, we attempt to stabilize the quantum field. If I'm right, this could change everything we understand about time. If I'm wrong, there may not be a tomorrow to record." The entry ended there. According to official records, Dr. Chen had resigned the following day due to health concerns. But Xiao knew institutional euphemisms when she saw them. Chen hadn't resigned. She had disappeared, just like all the other researchers who had reported temporal anomalies. Xiao carefully photographed the journal pages and returned the book to its place. As she turned to leave, a soft sound caught her attention. Footsteps, too light to belong to security. She followed the sound deeper into the archives, turning a corner to find herself in a section marked Pre-Collapse Artifacts. There, between the shelves, stood a figure. At first glance, it appeared to be a woman, but as Xiao approached, she realized something was wrong. The figure wasn't quite solid, its edges blurred, and light passed partially through it. Not a hologram, but something else entirely. "Hello?" Xiao called, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her caution. The figure turned. Its features were indistinct, but somehow familiar. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You saw it too, the regression." Xiao stepped closer. "Who are you?" "A memory, an echo." The figure's form rippled. "They called me the Shadow. I will be, like you, a researcher. The one before." "Before what?" "Before the stopping." The Shadow's voice grew urgent. "It's coming again. The mirror is waking up." "What is the stopping?" Xiao demanded. "What happens?" "Time pauses. Reality resets. They don't want you to know because they can't control it." The Shadow's form began to fade. "Find the original mirror, the prototype, before the council finds you." "Wait!" Xiao reached out, but her hand passed through the rapidly dissipating figure. "Where is the prototype?" The Shadow's final words barely reached her. "Where time began, where the first light." Then it was gone, leaving Xiao alone among the ancient archives. She stood frozen, her mind racing. The encounter defied scientific explanation, yet it aligned with everything she had discovered. The mirror, the regression anomalies, the stopping, they were all connected to something the council was desperate to hide. A noise at the archive entrance snapped her back to reality. Someone was coming. Xiao slipped between the shelves, making her way to a secondary exit. She needed time to process what she had learned, and she couldn't risk being discovered. As she hurried through the Institute's winding corridors, a plan began to form. If the Shadow was right, she had less than 2 days before the stopping occurred again. She needed access to the original mirror prototype, but first, she needed allies. There was only one person she might still trust. Dan Ting's private office was located in the security wing, far from her usual routes. It took Xiao nearly an hour of careful navigation to reach it without being seen. When she finally slipped inside, she found him reviewing security footage of her. entering the archives. He looked up, unsurprised. "I was wondering when you'd come find me." "You knew?" Xiao asked, suddenly uncertain. "That you're investigating the stopping?" "Yes." He gestured to a chair. "That you'd break into my office?" "I hoped you would." Xiao remained standing. "You've been watching me." "Protecting you," he corrected. "Do you have any idea what you're involved in? The Council has eliminated people for far less than what you're doing." "Then why haven't you reported me?" Dan's expression softened. "Because we were friends once. Because I've seen the same anomalies you have." He turned his screen toward her, showing footage of the mirror in her lab and the shadow figure that had appeared behind her reflection. "And because I think you're right." Relief washed over Xiao, followed immediately by suspicion. "Why should I trust you? You work for the Council." "I work for the Institute," Dan corrected. "And lately, I've begun to question who the Institute works for." He stood, moving to a secured terminal. 3 researchers have disappeared in the past month. All were investigating temporal anomalies. All reported seeing their reflections age backwards before they vanished. He entered a complex sequence of commands, bringing up classified files. "The Council calls it temporal psychosis, a mental breakdown caused by prolonged exposure to the mirror. But I've seen the evidence. It's real. Whatever it is." Xiao approached the terminal, scanning the files. They contained reports of dozens of similar cases throughout the mirror's history, all classified, all hidden from public record. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because the countdown has started again." Dan pulled up a secure feed showing the Institute's primary mirror chamber. The massive central mirror, far larger than the research versions, was exhibiting strange behavior. Waves of energy pulsed across its surface, and at its center, a pinpoint of light grew steadily brighter. "This happens every time before someone reports regression anomalies, and every time it leads to someone disappearing." "The stopping," Xiao whispered. Dan nodded grimly. "According to these records, we have less than 48 hours before it reaches critical mass. The Council is preparing to contain the situation, their euphemism for eliminating witnesses and evidence. "We need to find the prototype," Xiao said, explaining her encounter with the shadow. "It's the key to understanding what's happening." Dan's expression darkened. "The prototype is a myth. The Council claims it was destroyed during early testing." "But you don't believe that?" "No." He hesitated, then accessed another secure file. "There are rumors it was hidden beneath the city, in the ruins of Old Aurora, the settlement that existed before the Neo-cities." Old Aurora, a name from history texts. The original city had been abandoned after the collapse. The cataclysmic event that had reshaped human civilization 2 centuries ago. Now it lay buried beneath Neo-Aurora's foundations, forgotten by most. "How do we get there?" Xiao asked. "We don't," Dan said firmly. "I get you out of the Institute before the Council realizes what you know. You find somewhere to hide until this passes." Xiao shook her head. "This isn't going to pass. The stopping is coming, and I need to understand why." She met his gaze steadily. "You can help me or not, but I'm finding that prototype." Their standoff was interrupted by a sharp alarm from Dan's security console. He checked the alert, his expression shifting to urgency. "They're coming. The Council's security team is heading to your lab right now." He grabbed his access card. "We have minutes, at most." Xiao's mind raced. "The maintenance tunnels, they connect to the old city infrastructure." Dan nodded. "Level B5. I can get you there." He hesitated. "Xiao, if you do this, there's no coming back. The Council will brand you a traitor." "They already have," she replied. "They just don't know I know it yet." Their escape through the Institute's service corridors was tense but uneventful. Using Dan's security clearance, they avoided the main surveillance systems. Within 20 minutes, they reached a heavy maintenance door marked B5 restricted. This leads to the old water reclamation system, Dan explained as he overrode the security locks. Follow it east for 2 kilometers, and you'll reach the ruins of old Aurora. He handed her his personal comm unit. This is untraceable. Use it when you find something, or if you need extraction. You're not coming? Xiao asked, surprised by the sharp disappointment she felt. I can do more for you here. Someone needs to monitor the council's movements. He gave her a rare smile. Besides, you work better alone. You always have. Before she could respond, the door slid open, revealing a dark tunnel stretching into the distance. Stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of metal and damp stone. 48 hours. Xiao, Dan reminded her. After that, if the stopping is real, I'll find the prototype before then, she promised. Be careful. He hesitated, then added quietly, the council isn't the only danger down there. The old city. It changed after the collapse. The few who've gone exploring haven't all returned. With those ominous words, Xiao stepped into the tunnel. The heavy door sealed behind her, leaving her alone with only the dim emergency lighting to guide her way. The journey through the ancient maintenance tunnels was arduous. Zhao navigated through partially collapsed sections and areas where the automated systems had failed centuries ago. The deeper she went, the more the technology around her regressed, from the sleek quantum-integrated systems of Neo-Aurora to crude electronic interfaces, and finally to purely mechanical constructions. It was like traveling backward through time. 2 hours into her journey, Xiao's path was blocked by a massive steel door, its surface covered in rust and corrosion. No electronic lock, no modern security, just an ancient wheel mechanism that would require physical strength to turn. As she struggled with the unyielding wheel, a soft glow caught her attention. A beam of light was emerging from a crack in the tunnel wall, not the blue-white of modern illumination, but a warm, golden radiance unlike anything in Neo-Aurora. Curiosity piqued. Xiao investigated the crack, finding it was actually a narrow fissure in the concrete. She squeezed through, emerging into a vast underground chamber that took her breath away. She stood at the edge of old Aurora, not ruins as she had expected, but a preserved metropolis frozen in time. Buildings of glass and early composite materials stood intact, streets laid out in perfect grid patterns. Most astonishing was the light source, an enormous artificial sun suspended from the cavern ceiling, still functioning after 2 centuries. Impossible, Zhao whispered, her voice echoing in the stillness. According to historical records, old Aurora had been destroyed during the collapse. Yet here it stood, perfectly preserved beneath Neo-Aurora, a secret city hidden from the world. As Xiao ventured deeper into the abandoned metropolis, she noticed something strange. The city wasn't merely preserved, it was stopped. Vehicles remained in the streets, some with doors open as if their occupants had simply stepped away momentarily. Public terminals still displayed information from 200 years ago. In one building, she found a restaurant with meals still set on tables. The food neither decayed nor fresh, but suspended in a state of perfect preservation. It was as if time itself had stopped here. The implications staggered her. The stopping hadn't been merely a technological glitch or a cover-up. It had been literal. Time had stopped in old Aurora during the collapse, preserving it like an insect in amber. But why? And how was it connected to the mirror? Xiao consulted the historical maps she had downloaded before her escape. If the prototype mirror existed, logic suggested it would be in the city's research district. She oriented herself using the artificial sun and set out toward the northeast quadrant. The city's silence was eerie, not the absence of sound, but something deeper. The air itself seemed frozen, resistant to the vibrations of her footsteps. It reminded her of the quantum suspension fields used in the Institute's most delicate experiments, but on an impossible scale. She had walked for nearly an hour when she noticed she was being followed. The sensation came gradually, a prickling awareness of eyes watching, the faintest echo of movement behind her. When she turned, she caught glimpses of a familiar blurred figure. The shadow. This time, Xiao didn't call out. Instead, she followed where the apparition seemed to lead, through increasingly complex streets until she reached a circular plaza. At its center stood a building unlike the others, a perfect dome of what appeared to be solid obsidian, unmarked by windows or visible entrances. As she approached, a seam appeared in the black surface, widening into a doorway. Light spilled out, the same golden radiance that illuminated the city, but more intense. Almost alive in its movement. The shadow's voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. The Chronos Sanctum, where it began. Xiao hesitated at the threshold. Every scientific instinct warned her that what she was experiencing defied rational explanation. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The preserved city, the shadow guide, the countdown to another stopping event. If answers existed, they would be inside. She stepped through the doorway. The interior of the dome was a single vast chamber, its walls inscribed with mathematical equations and diagrams that Xiao recognized as early temporal theory. At the center, raised on a dais, stood a structure that made her gasp. The prototype mirror. Unlike the sleek quantum glass of modern mirrors, this was crude by comparison. A frame of unknown metal surrounding what appeared to be actual glass. Yet it hummed with power that Xiao could feel in her bones, a resonance that made her teeth ache and her vision blur. Before she could approach, the shadow materialized beside her, more solid than before, its features resolved into those of a woman, dressed in clothing 2 centuries out of date. With a jolt, Xiao recognized her. "Dr. Miranda Chen," she breathed. The figure nodded. "What remains of her?" "Of me." Her voice was clearer now, though still distant. "I've waited for someone who could see, someone who could understand." "Understand what?" Xiao asked. "What happened here? What is the stopping?" "Not what, when." Chen's spectral form moved toward the prototype mirror. "Time isn't linear, Dr. Xiao. It's a loop, constantly folding back on itself. The mirror doesn't merely reflect time, it accesses it, all of it. Past, present, future. That's impossible." Xiao objected. "Temporal mechanics clearly show." "Your equations are incomplete." Chen interrupted. "We thought we were creating a tool to observe time. Instead, we created a window, and something looked back." The prototype mirror's surface rippled, and Xiao felt a pull toward it, like gravity but stronger, a temporal attraction. "What looked back?" she asked, resisting the pull. "Our ancestors, our descendants, all humanity, across all time." Chen's form flickered. "The mirror, connected to the collective consciousness of our species, what you might call the collective memory of mankind. It exists outside of linear time, observing all moments simultaneously." Xiao struggled to comprehend. "You're saying the mirror is not alive, aware?" Chen gestured to the equations on the walls. "We built it to manipulate time, to let humans control their aging, but it became something else. A repository for human memory and experience, a temporal anchor point. And the stopping? A defense mechanism. When too many people access the mirror, when too much temporal manipulation occurs, it resets. Time pauses, realigns. Without it, the fabric of reality would have unraveled centuries ago from our meddling." Xiao's mind raced. "The aging backwards, the regression anomalies, "Warnings," Chen confirmed. "The mirror shows temporal instability by reversing the observer's timeline. It happened to me before the first stopping. It's happening to you now." "But why preserve all this?" Zhao gestured to the city beyond the dome. Why stop time here? To protect the prototype, and to preserve a record of what we were before the mirror changed everything. Chen's expression grew sad. The Council knows the truth. They've always known. They use the stopping to maintain their control. Each reset allows them to rewrite history, to erase those who discover too much. The implications were staggering. The Chronos Council wasn't merely controlling the mirror technology. They were using the stopping to maintain their power, erasing threats and rewriting reality to suit their purposes. How do I stop them? Zhao asked. You don't. Chen's form began to fade. The stopping is necessary. Without it, humanity's temporal manipulation would destroy reality. But its purpose has been corrupted. It should preserve truth, not erase it. The prototype mirror's surface blazed suddenly with golden light, and Xiao felt the pull strengthen. What's happening? She demanded as the chamber began to tremble. The countdown has reached 0. The stopping comes. Chen's voice grew distant. You must choose. Xiao He, let the council control the reset, or step through and see the truth for yourself. Step through? Into the mirror? The idea was absurd, terrifying. What's on the other side? The beginning, the truth. Chen's form was barely visible now. I chose to stay, to warn others. You must decide your own path. The chamber shook violently. Beyond the dome, Xiao could see the artificial sun flickering, the preserved city beginning to waver like a mirage. The stopping had begun. Xiao turned to the prototype mirror, its surface now a swirling vortex of golden light. Physics, logic, reason, all told her that stepping through was madness. Yet something deeper than science, an intuition she had always trusted, told her Chen was right. The council would use the stopping to erase her, to hide the truth again, unless she saw for herself what lay beyond. With a deep breath, Xiao stepped onto the dais. The mirror's pull was irresistible now, the golden light enveloping her. As she approached its surface, she saw her reflection one last time, aging rapidly backward until she appeared as a child, then an infant, then nothing at all. Find the truth. Chen's voice whispered. Remember for all of us. Xiao closed her eyes and stepped forward. The sensation was unlike anything she could have imagined. Not pain, but a complete dissolution of self. Her consciousness expanded outward, connecting to countless others across time and space. She saw humanity's beginning, the first use of tools, the discovery of fire. She witnessed civilizations rise and fall, technology advance and regress in endless cycles. And she understood. The mirror hadn't been created by modern humanity at all. It was ancient, a technology so old that its origins predated recorded history. Each civilization discovered it anew, used it, abused it, and triggered the stopping. The cycle had repeated countless times. But the mirror's true purpose wasn't to control time or extend life. It was memory, a repository of human experience preserved across eons. Without it, humanity would forget its past, doomed to repeat the same mistakes endlessly. The Chronos Council had discovered this truth and hoarded it, using the stopping to maintain their power rather than to preserve knowledge. Each reset allowed them to erase inconvenient truths and rewrite history. As Xiao's consciousness expanded, she felt herself becoming part of the mirror's awareness, not losing her identity, but extending it across time. She could choose to remain here, as Chen had, becoming a guardian of memory. Or she could return, carrying the truth with her. The decision came with clarity. Humanity needed to remember, to break the cycle. The mirror's power wasn't meant for control, but for preservation, of memory, of experience, of wisdom across generations. With that realization, Xiao felt herself pulled back, her consciousness condensing once more into a single point of awareness. Light engulfed her, then darkness. When she opened her eyes, she stood in her laboratory at the Institute. The tempora mirror hung on the wall, its surface calm. According to the chronometer, less than an hour had passed since she had first observed the regression anomaly. But everything had changed. Xiao could feel the difference in herself, a connection to the collective memory she had experienced. More importantly, she understood the mirror now, not as a tool for manipulating time, but as a bridge to humanity's shared past and future. The door to her laboratory slid open, and Dan Ting entered. His expression was neutral, professional, no recognition of their escape, their friendship, or the secrets they had shared. "Dr. Xiao," he said formally, "the Council requests your presence. They're interested in your research on temporal stability." Of course they were. The stopping had occurred. Reality had reset, and the Council believed they had maintained control. They had no memory of her discovery, her escape, her understanding of the truth. But Xiao remembered, and, unlike Chen, who had chosen to remain behind as a warning, Xiao had returned with knowledge and purpose. "I'll be there shortly," she told Dan, keeping her expression carefully neutral. "I have some results they'll find very interesting." As he left, Xiao turned to the mirror, seeing it truly for the first time, not as a reflection of herself, but as a window to all humanity had been and could become. The Council believed they controlled the mirror, but they had never understood its true nature. They manipulated time. The mirror preserved memory, and memory, Xiao now knew, was more powerful than any temporal manipulation. With the knowledge she carried, she could help humanity remember its past, understand the cycles of power and control that had repeated throughout history. She could use the mirror as it was intended, not to erase truth, but to preserve it. The next stopping would come eventually. The temporal instabilities would build. The mirror would reset reality once more. But this time, Xiao would be prepared. This time, she would ensure that humanity remembered. She placed her hand on the mirror's surface, feeling the connection to countless generations across time. Her reflection showed neither aging nor regression now, but simply herself, present in this moment, yet connected to all moments. "I remember," she whispered to the mirror, "and I will help others remember too." The mirror's surface rippled once in response, a silent acknowledgement of her promise. Outside her laboratory window, Neo Aurora continued its existence, unaware that anything had changed. But beneath the city, in the preserved remains of old Aurora, the prototype mirror glowed with golden light, a beacon of memory in a world that had forgotten how to remember. Xiao turned away from the mirror, ready to face the Council with her new understanding. The true power of the temporum mirror wasn't controlling time. It was preserving the collective memory of humanity across all time. And memory, once awakened, could never truly be stopped again.